Hey all, Tom Moran here from Tom's Big Spiders. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the care and husbandry for Theraphosa, apophysis, or apophysis. I picked these guys up a little over a year ago, and I don't know why I never did apparently an unboxing video, nor did I do a video of the original housing of them. A little odd for me, but anyway, we're going to make up for that by doing this video here where we talk about the care. We'll talk about how to set them up as slings, what I'm putting them into now that mine is a juvenile, and we'll speculate a bit on what mine will go into when it's an adult. So enough of me talking, let's get into the actual video. All right, so we're about to rehouse my Theraphosa apophysis, or apophysis, say it whichever way you want. Picked these guys up in June of 2020, and amazingly, I didn't do a video on them. I must have been a late night unboxing or something. We couldn't find any evidence that we had picked these guys up, and I honestly thought I had done a video on them before, but I hadn't. I'd done a podcast, so this will be the first video featuring these. Really excited about them. My buddy Charles had one long before I did and kept sending me photos of it, and really it rose to the top of my must-have list, my wish list. Finally picked up two. This is one of them here that we're going to be rehousing. This was the one featured, I believe the one featured in the last feeding video I did. So to kick this one off, obviously these are moisture-dependent species, so you want to make sure that you keep them moist. As slings, this one went right into this enclosure as a sling because these are large spiders. So Billy wants to back up just a hair. We got it in one of these mainstay ones that's about 2 quarts or so, about, I don't know, 7 inches by 5 by like 4 inches deep. Normally I wouldn't use something this large for slings, but keep in mind when you're dealing with Theraphosa species, they do grow very quickly. So although when I put them in there, they're only about that big or so, and it looked like they were kind of swimming in this enclosure, they quickly grew into it. This one here now is about 4 inches or so, 4.5 inches. So really good growth rate, not as fast as my Blondie or Sturmy, but that could be due to the temperatures. Keep in mind that, you know, if they're kept a little bit warmer, they might grow a little bit more quickly. I think my buddy Charles has grown a little more quickly than mine, but he lives in the south, and I'm guessing he gets some warmer temperatures. So some tips for these guys before we get into the rehousing that I think is important with any of the Theraphosa species. Number one, substrate. Do not be a substrate Scrooge. These are moisture-dependent species, but that doesn't mean you need to keep it swampy. The easiest way to keep a moisture-dependent species is to give it several inches of moist substrate, let the top dry out a bit, and so you don't have that moist level, that swampy level up top, and then keep those lower levels moist so they can burrow to the moisture level that they need. I see a lot of people that put these guys in, they don't give them enough substrate. They will burrow as slings too, so that's important. These guys, when they were early on, when they had the room, obviously not right now, would burrow and hide when they would molt. So you want to make sure you give them enough room to dig, burrow, be comfortable. That will avoid the next issue that you may have with these guys. They are incredibly fast. My Theraphosa Sturmy, Blondie, and apophysis are all very, very quick. They are leggy spiders, and they can use those legs to cover a lot of distance very quickly. I don't know why this isn't mentioned more when talking about these guys. As adults, they can be quick as well, but the slings and juveniles especially are very, very bolty, very fast. Almost in line with one of the ones we'd call a teleporter. I've watched them spring out of their burrows, grab a cricket, and be back in the burrow in a blink of an eye. So something to keep track of. And one thing you want to make sure with these guys is, again, starting them in the larger enclosures that not only gives more room for substrate, but gives more room for the spider to grow. This is not a species I would start in the old 16-ounce deli cup or a dram vial or even one of the little Amac boxes. You want to give them some space so that, again, you can keep it moist and they have room to grow. So let's go ahead and move this one. We'll talk a little bit more about it after we get it out. What we're putting it into here, I'll explain this now, is one of the, what do they, Mainstay makes them, another company makes them, the high-heeled shoebox ones or the shoebox ones. I will put a link up. I'll try to remember this time. It's going to give it some room. Now remember, one of the things when dealing with moisture-dependent species is keeping it moist is one thing. We want to let this top layer dry out a little bit. I do have, I don't know if Billy can see them in there. Everybody always asks. I do have Springtails in here. They're in there. I don't know if they're going to show up, but they're all around.
They're showing up.
Okay, good. We do have Springtails in it, so you can keep some of the spots moist, and using the leaf litter helps keep the spots from drying out underneath. So that's one of the reasons if you just put Springtails in there with nothing to hide underneath, they tend to dry out quickly. However, what we also have here is good ventilation. There's ventilation on this side, this side, this side, and this side. You want to make sure that when keeping the moisture-dependent species, that you include enough ventilation to make sure that these containers and these enclosures don't become too stuffy. That can be a death trap. And again, I'll pick this up so hopefully you can see it. This substrate is going to stir. Substrate is going to start out moist, but you can see here it's moist, a little drier over here. What we want is that level right here to stay moist. As that starts going down, you'll see that dark layer there will start to go down as it dries out. That's when you add more water, when it gets too low. You don't need to keep, back in the day when I was keeping moisture-dependent species, if I saw any dry spots, I'd immediately pour water in. It's not what you need for these guys. What you want is those bottom layers to stay moist while the top dries out a little bit, which keeps the fungus and stuff away. And in order to rehydrate, I have a whole video on this, and I will put it up. They got the little cards. I'll put a little card up top. I use something like that there, my old Welch's bottle. And what we do is we kind of aim for the sides and moisten it down. I don't spray. Spraying's good for a supplement. I'm not one of those people that doesn't think you should spray at all. I do like spraying for someone. They'll come out and drink off the glass, but it is not a good way to keep these enclosures hydrated, because even if I spray the snot out of this, it's only going to hit the surface. That surface with the good airflow is going to dry out very quickly, and you're going to have a dry enclosure. There, let's move a spider. I think we're going to use our old sponsored by Simply Limeade by Tropicana. I'm hoping someday they'll see this and they'll just support my whole gig. I'll never have to work again. I'll be in Tropicana commercials.
I don't see that happening.
It's going to happen. Watch. All right. I'm going to get you right up.
More bottles downstairs.
No, and they do have hairs. Actually, probably about 4 inches. I had the tape measure out over there. I don't know if it's showing up. And watch those hairs. Another little tip. When you're rehousing and they kick, always be sure to wash out the containers, because what will happen is, and it's very easy, obviously it just kicked on the brush, it kicked in here. Later on I'll forget, I'll be playing around with this, and I'll hair myself by putting my hands in the hair. Come on. Go. 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 We never set up the second camera. I just realized that. I wonder why this was so easy. Oh well. Usually we have a second camera, and I forgot today. We have a busy weekend, so I was trying to fit this one in. I'm going to get the other side of it when it comes out, which would usually be my other camera, but I don't have camera B. It's going to be a quick one to edit. Oh, and there's a big old chunk of hair. Yummy. So there she is. Now these guys, everybody talks about the biggest Theraphosis species, and there's arguments. I love when people argue over Blondie or Sturmy, because they're honestly so close that most people can't even tell the difference, which is why a lot of people buy Blondies and get Sturmies. They're both big, hulking, thick spiders, with the apophysis apophysis a little different in that, one thing we can notice right off the bat, those pink feet, when they start off, their common name is the pink-footed Goliath, yes. I believe. And that's because they have pink feet on all feet, where the Sturmy will have pink feet on the front 4, and the Blondie will have no pink feet at all. As adults, these guys get huge, and if I'm not mistaken, one of the biggest spiders on record is an apophysis that was around 12 inches to 13 inches across. They get huge and leggy, so there are more leggy Theraphosis species than the Blondie or Sturmy. I also believe that males can get some purple on them, so I can't imagine having a 10-inch plus purple spider. I would assume, again, with a lot of the larger spiders, people like to talk about the big giant ones. 10 to 12 inches would not be out of the range of possibility with this species. I would honestly think that wouldn't be an issue. I know some of them we talk about, it's very rare for them to hit that large, but 10 inches I think would be no problem at all. So as far as humidity, I know somebody will ask about humidity. I don't measure humidity in my tarantula enclosures. What you do is you give them moist substrate. It can drive you nuts trying to measure the humidity, so that's why I've had a lot of people lately asking why I don't do that and thinking I'm forgetting it. I'm not. What I know is if those bottom layers stay moist, she will be getting a water dish over here as well. That will help keep the moisture levels up inside this enclosure. It's kind of like a little micro environment. You don't need a humidity gauge to tell you if it is moist enough in here. If you do the water dish and keep the substrate moist, you are good. Don't kill yourself trying to maintain some quote-unquote ideal humidity level that is not needed. All that does is add more aggravation and honestly results in situations where people imperil their spiders by creating an inhospitable environment for them that is too humid. They start getting fungus, bacteria. We don't want that. So that's something I want to mention. As far as temperatures, you'll read stuff out there that say they have to be kept at ideal temperatures like in the 80s. My guys are kept in the summertime. It will hit the 80s, high 70s to low 80s. In the wintertime, I keep it around 73, depending on the shelf it's on. These guys are on a shelf that was around 72, 73. I've kept spiders before down in the 60s with no problem whatsoever. Just recognize that the warmer temperatures do usually kick in their metabolisms and you might get faster growth, but it is not going to harm the spider if it dips a little lower. I know Theraphosa species, there's a lot out there written that they need those higher temperatures. In my experience, they do not. So the enclosure here for a juvenile, you're going to want something, 2 or 3 gallons at least. I'm guessing this one will probably outgrow this one and a few molts, but I really wanted to get it out of this one here, and I had one of these open, so we're putting it here. If you want to do something a little bigger, it's perfectly fine. If you give it a really large enclosure, one thing to do is to put some plants and stuff that will allow them to venture out a little bit more. Now, as far as adults are concerned, again, these are big spiders, so you're going to want larger enclosures. Something around 10 to 20 gallons would probably work. 10, 15 would probably be great. I'm looking at my 15-gallon one. That would be pretty good. If you have a 12-inch spider, obviously, you're going to need something on the larger size, around 15 to 20 gallons. We'll see how big this one gets and what we're going to put it in. I do have some 10-gallon acrylic ones that I will be using for my blondies to see how that goes. And if they outgrow them, then we'll probably go to 15 or 20. But again, you're going to need space. And as adults, you do not want to, again, be a substrate Scrooge. If you get an adult, you want to make sure you find an enclosure that allows for at least 4 or 5 inches of substrate, and you want to keep those lower levels moist. So the deeper it is, the easier it is to keep it from drying out too quickly. That is the trick. If you put 2 inches of substrate in there, even if you pack it down, moisten it down good, if you have the correct airflow, that will dry out very fast. Eating. They're eating machines. I've never had an issue with any Theraphosa species eating. The apophysis is no exception. They will bolt across the enclosure, tackle things. They will eat more than one prey item as slings. Even when it was about 1.25 inches, it was eating medium crickets and medium roaches. It was taking them down with no problem. They will take larger prey. Some spiders seem to be intimidated by it, not these guys. As juveniles, this one will eat large crickets. I will usually drop in 1 or 2. As far as how often to feed, that's adorable. How often to feed it, as slings, I feed mine twice a week, but recognize that that is just what I do because I want to get them out of that sling stage and I like to check on them more often. You can feed them once a month. If you feed them a larger meal, you don't have to feed them as often. For adults and juveniles, I usually feed them once a week to once every other week. It depends, but I usually check on them at least weekly to make sure that the moisture levels are okay and their water dishes are full. Now, as far as temperament's concerned, this one is being calm as can be. They're still young, little skittish, but even considering that cage, that enclosure that I just took it out of was very small, she was still well behaved and never bolted out of that enclosure, which is good to note. Now that she's in this bigger one, I'm hoping she'll be a little more relaxed. We'll see how it goes. But again, these are fast spiders. They can be very skittish, and you don't want to mess around with the hairs.
She's so cute.
She's adorable. I love the little pink feet.
The pink feet are awesome.
Hopefully it's a girl. I think one of them was sexed female. I forgot what it was, which one it was. So we'll see. So that should do it. Oh, as far as substrate's concerned, you can use cocoa fiber. You can use peat. You can use topsoil. You can use a mixture. Try to keep something that's going to absorb that water easily. I use BioDude stuff. This one in here is actually a mixture of my own stuff that is peat, cocoa fiber with some ground up sphagnum moss in it. You want the sphagnum moss helps that water kind of percolate down through, because the problem is, so say you use topsoil, what can happen is the topsoil, if it completely dries up, it will not absorb the water well. Vermiculite is something I've also used to great effect in a lot of enclosures, moisture-dependent enclosures, to ensure that they absorb that water really well. So feel free to experiment. There's no right or wrong as far as substrate is concerned. Just make sure you use something that allows you to rehydrate it easily, because it can be very frustrating to have the enclosure start to dry out. You try to pour water in and it just puddles up on the top and makes mud. And I think I covered it all on this one. I'm on a roll today. So there we go, Theraphosa, apophysis or apophysis, the pink-footed Goliath, gorgeous spiders. I do have all 3 now. I have a little Sturmy that's missing a leg that is growing. Oh, actually, no, the leg grew back, and we featured that in a video, I think. And then I have my 2 blondies that'll be getting rehoused soon. They're going to be getting into, hopefully, big acrylic enclosures with plants, but I'm trying to find the plants. Nope, you have to go in, so we're going to go ahead. Nope, get your feet in there. Get your feet. Get your feet.
Tootsies out there.
Nope, get your feet. Get your feet. Get your feet. Look at her. So cute. She's actually like literally exploring. It's kind of adorable.
Is her other foot in?
I don't know. I'm going to try to... Yep, there we go. There we go. A little excitement. Oh, a little threat posture. Hey, what's going on? Oh, that's adorable. So there we go. She's rehoused. Sorry for the lack of second camera, but this will make this one easier to edit. So hey, good for Tom. So there we go. T, apophysis, awesome spiders. Encourage everybody to check them out. Not as hard as people make them out to be, as long as you pay attention to the moist substrate and the ventilation. So again, not to keep beating the point to death, but the trick with these guys is not to overdo it with the moisture. You want moist substrate, you want those lower levels to stay moist, but the top can dry out a bit. A lot of us, when we start keeping the moisture-dependent species, freak out and immediately, as soon as a little corner starts drying out, we pour more water in. That's not the way to do it. You want to let it dry out just a little bit on the top, but as you see that line, the lighter line that shows that the substrate is dry, start to creep further and deeper, or deeper and deeper into the actual substrate, that's when you want to add some more water back in. So as long as those lower levels, a couple inches or so, are moist, your spider is fine. And of course, always give it a water dish. That helps as well. So that will do it for this one. As always, if you liked the video enough to subscribe, very much appreciated. Click the little circle up there. If you'd like to check out some more videos, you'll find them over here. Please feel free to comment. Love getting comments. It may take me a couple days to answer, but know that if you take time to comment, I will take the time to respond. Thanks so much for watching, guys. That'll do it for this one. Stay safe. We'll catch you next time. And if anybody's still listening right now, leave in the comments your favorite band and your favorite album by them.